I found the note tucked inside my husband's old watchbox 3 days after we buried him. My hands trembled as I read his slanted handwriting. Martha, our Sarah, didn't crash her car. Tom pushed her. He told me years later, drunk and crying. I never had the courage to tell you. Tom, his best friend, the man who has eaten at my table every Sunday for 30 years, the man due here in 24 hours. I folded the paper carefully, my heart a cold, hard stone. I placed it back exactly as I found it. Then I went to the kitchen and started polishing the silver. I smiled, a thin, tight smile. I would serve him dinner tomorrow, just like always. But I would remember every word my husband wrote, every single word. I knew what I had to do now. I needed proof, something more than a dead man's confession. Tom was a respected man in our community, a deacon at the local church. No one would believe me without evidence. It would cost me my sanity. I had to sit across from the man who murdered my child and make small talk about the weather. I had to listen to him ask about my grandchildren, his voice full of false concern. The strain was overwhelming. One wrong look, one strained silence, and he might suspect. I was an old woman living alone in the house where my daughter grew up. He could easily have me declared unfit, shuffled off somewhere. I was arranging tulips in a vase when the doorbell rang, an hour early. It wasn't Tom. It was my son, Mark, his face grim. "Mum, we need to talk about the house." He stepped inside, not waiting for an invitation. He didn't notice how my hands shook as I closed the door. He was too busy looking at the furniture, already appraising it. Mark sat at my kitchen table, the same one where Tom would sit tomorrow. "The market is good right now, Mum. This place is too big for you. We could get a nice condo for you, closer to us." He meant closer to him and his wife, who barely tolerated my visits. I poured him coffee, my movements slow and deliberate. "This is my home, Mark. Your father and I built a life here." He sighed, the way he does when he thinks I'm being difficult. "It's not safe for you here alone. What if you fall?" The irony was thick enough to taste. I was in more danger from the people who claimed to love me than from any loose rug. I had to stall him, to keep my home as my base of operations. It came with his growing impatience and the risk he'd start legal proceedings for power of attorney. His next words added to the tension. "Tom agrees with me. We talked about it last week. He's worried about you, too." Tom. Of course he was. Getting me out of this house would make his secret safer. I nodded slowly, playing the confused old mother. "I'll think about it, dear." After he left, I went to the basement. In a dusty trunk, I found Sarah's old things, her diaries. I never had the heart to read them after she died. I sat on the cold concrete floor, a blanket around my shoulders, and opened the one from the year she turned 16. Her youthful script filled the pages with school gossip and dreams. Then, near the end, an entry made my blood freeze. "Dad's friend Tom gives me the creeps. He always finds a way to touch my shoulder or back. I told Dad, but he just said Tom is like an uncle." I closed the book, holding it to my chest. This was a start, but it wasn't enough. I heard the floorboards creak upstairs. I was sure I'd locked the door. The creaking stopped. I waited in the silence of the basement, barely breathing. Then the house phone rang, shrill and insistent. I climbed the stairs, my knees protesting. It was my granddaughter, Lily. "Grandma, are you okay? Dad said he was over and you seemed off." I forced cheer into my voice. "I'm perfectly fine, sweetheart. Just missing your grandfather." I was playing a role for all of them now. I needed to access the old police report on Sarah's accident. I had to see the official story. It meant maintaining this constant performance, eroding my true self. Tom's impending visit, now only hours away, added to the strain. After hanging up, I drove to the county records office. The clerk, a young woman with a bored expression, told me files that old were in archived storage. It could take days to retrieve. "I can put in a request," she said, not looking up from her screen. I stood there, feeling the weight of my age. Then I remembered something. My husband had a friend, retired Sergeant Miller. He lived in a retirement community across town. I drove there, my hands tight on the wheel. I found him playing checkers in the common room. His eyes widened when he saw me. "Martha, what brings you here?" I didn't smile. "I need to know the truth about Sarah, Bill." He paled. He glanced around, then gestured for me to sit. He spoke in a low voice. "The report was clean? Single car accident? But there was a witness. A kid on a bike saw a man arguing with a girl matching Sarah's description near the cliff road that night. The description fit Tom. We brought him in. Your husband provided an alibi for him, said they were together." I felt the world tilt. My own husband had protected her killer. I thanked Bill and walked out, the sun too bright. When I got home, there was a single dead rose lying on my welcome mat. I picked up the rose, its petals black and brittle. A message. He knew I was digging. Tom was letting me know he was watching. My Sunday dinner with him was now a countdown. I had to secure my assets. If Tom and Mark were working together, I couldn't let them control my money or my home. The loneliness of this secret fight was the price. The clock ticking down to his arrival intensified the tension. I went to my bank and asked to speak with the manager, a man named David who'd known my husband. I sat in his quiet office. "David, I want to remove my son, Mark, from all my joint accounts and safety deposit boxes. Effective immediately." He looked surprised, but processed the paperwork. "And I want to set up a new will," I said, "with a different lawyer." He nodded, his professionalism a shield. I left the bank feeling a sliver of control. My next stop was the library. I used a public computer to search for Tom's name. I found nothing about a criminal record, but I did find his business listings. He owned a small property management company. And one of the properties he managed was the building where Sergeant Bill Miller lived. Coincidence? I didn't think so. I drove home, my mind racing. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw a car parked down the street. It was Tom's. He wasn't due for hours. He was just sitting there, watching my house. I parked and walked inside, not looking his way. I went straight to the hall closet and took down my husband's old fishing tackle box. Inside, under the lures, was the key to a storage unit I'd forgotten about. A unit rented in only my husband's name. The key was cold in my hand. What had my husband hidden there? I needed to get to that storage unit before anyone else. It meant facing a direct confrontation. Tom's car, still idling down the street, kept me on edge. I couldn't go now. He'd follow me. I had to wait him out. I busied myself in the kitchen, preparing the meal for tomorrow's dreadful dinner. I made his favorite pot roast, the smell of it turning my stomach. Every time I glanced out the window, his car was there. An hour passed. Then my phone rang. It was the retirement home. "Ms. Martha, this is about Bill Miller. He had a bad fall in his apartment this afternoon. He's asking for you." My blood ran cold. A fall. Right after I spoke to him. I told the nurse I'd be there soon. I hung up and peered outside. Tom's car was gone. He'd gotten his message. I grabbed my purse and the storage key, my heart hammering. I drove to the retirement home first. Bill was in the infirmary, his arm in a sling, his face pale. He gripped my hand when I came close. He warned me to keep quiet, he whispered. Tom. He said accidents happen to old people who talk too much. I squeezed his hand. I'm so sorry, Bill. I stayed until he fell asleep. Then I drove across town to the storage facility. It was a sprawling, fenced-in place. I found Unit 217 and slid the key into the lock. It turned with a heavy clunk. I took a deep breath and rolled up the door. The unit was nearly empty, except for one thing. Sitting in the middle of the concrete floor was Sarah's old backpack, the one she had with her the night she died. It was clean, as if it had been waiting for me. I knelt on the cold concrete, Sarah's backpack in my hands. It smelled faintly of dust and old fabric, a scent that brought back a wave of grief so sharp it stole my breath. Tom's dinner was in less than a day. I had to know what was inside. My fingers fumbled with the zipper. I was risking everything. If Tom knew I had this, his friendly visits would turn into something darker. The pressure was immense, a constant weight on my chest. Inside, I found her schoolbooks, a hairbrush, and a folded sweater. Then my hand closed around something hard and rectangular. It was a small, digital camera, the kind teenagers used back then. The battery was long dead. I needed to see the pictures. I shoved everything back into the pack, my heart pounding. As I stood to leave, a shadow fell across the open unit door. I froze, expecting Tom. But it was only the facility manager, making his rounds. "Everything all right, ma'am?" he asked. I forced a smile and nodded, clutching the backpack to my chest. He tipped his hat and moved on. I hurried to my car, the camera burning a hole in my purse. When I got home, I plugged the camera into an old charger in the kitchen. While it powered up, I noticed the message light blinking on my landline. It was Mark. "Mum, call me back. It's urgent about the house." His voice was tight. I deleted the message. The camera screen flickered to life. The camera held only a dozen photos. Most were of Sarah with her friends, smiling and carefree. But the last few were different. They were taken at a park, the one near the cliff road where she died. In one, Tom was in the background, his face turned away, but his posture was unmistakable. In another, he was closer, his hand on her arm. Sarah's expression was strained, uncomfortable. This was the proof I needed. But it wasn't enough for the police. It was just photos of a family friend. I needed to find something concrete, something that tied him directly to her death. I was risking my own safety. I was poking a bear. Tom's influence was everywhere, as Bill's accident proved. I had to be smarter. I needed to talk to the witness, the kid on the bike. Finding him after all these years felt impossible. I spent the afternoon on the library computer again, searching old newspaper archives for any mention of the accident or a witness. I found a small article that listed the responding officers. One name stood out: Officer D. Riggs. He wasn't Sergeant Miller. He might still be around. My search was interrupted by the doorbell. It was a delivery man with a bouquet of flowers. The card read, "Thinking of you in this difficult time, Tom." The flowers were lilies, the same kind we had at Sarah's funeral. I threw the lilies in the trash, my hands shaking. Tom was playing psychological games, reminding me of my loss. It steeled my resolve. I called the police department's non-emergency line and asked if Officer D. Riggs was still employed. After being transferred twice, a bored voice told me he retired years ago and gave me a last known town. It was a start. I drove there the next morning, a 2-hour trip. The town was small, and I found his house using the phone book at a local gas station. He answered the door, a stout man in his 60s, wary. When I mentioned Sarah's case, his face closed off. Case is closed, ma'am. Ancient history. I didn't budge. My husband left a note. He said it wasn't an accident. Riggs sighed, looking past me down the street. Look, I remember that kid. He was scared. His parents wouldn't let him talk. Then your husband and his buddy provided a rock-solid alibi. We had to drop it. He started to close the door. The buddy's name was Tom, I said. Riggs paused. He was a smooth talker. Made a donation to the department's youth fund that year. Coincidence, I'm sure. He shut the door firmly. I stood on his porch, the pieces clicking into place. Tom had bought his silence, or at least his cooperation. As I walked back to my car, a familiar vehicle drove slowly past. It was Tom's car. He had followed me. Tom didn't stop. He just drove by, a ghost at the edge of my vision. He knew I was digging, and now he knew how far I'd come. I had to move faster. I had to secure my position before his Sunday dinner visit, now only hours away. I needed a lawyer, one he didn't know. It was sapping the last of my energy, feeling every one of my 72 years. I drove straight to a law firm in the next county, one specializing in elder law. I sat with a sharp-eyed woman named Angela and explained everything. The note, the photos, Tom's threats, Mark's pressure to sell. I showed her the camera. She listened intently. We can file a restraining order based on the harassment and your suspicions, she said. And we can make your new will ironclad, excluding Mark if he's collaborating with Tom. It was a relief to share the burden. She drew up the papers immediately. As I signed them, my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. A photo of my house, taken from the street. The message read, "Looking forward to dinner." The pressure was suffocating. I left the lawyer's office with the documents in my bag, a small shield. When I arrived home, the front door was unlocked. I always lock it. I pushed it open slowly, my heart in my throat. The house was silent, but the air felt different. Someone had been inside. I stood in my hallway, listening. Nothing. I checked every room, my old heart thumping. Nothing was stolen, but in the living room, on the mantelpiece, the framed photo of Sarah was face down. A message. He had been in my home. I righted the photo, my hand steadying on the fireplace. This was no longer about subtle threats. It was a violation. My deadline was now this dinner, tonight. I would not be a victim in my own house. I called Angela back and told her about the break-in. She advised me to call the police, but I knew it would be my word against his. Instead, I prepared. I made the pot roast, set the table with my best china, and placed a small digital voice recorder in the centerpiece, disguised as a decorative bird. I would get him to talk. I had to face him, smiling, while knowing what he did. The doorbell rang at 7 sharp. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Tom stood there, holding a bottle of wine, his smile warm and familiar. "Martha, you look well," he said, stepping inside. He hugged me, his grip a fraction too tight. Over his shoulder, I saw a car pull up across the street. Mark was here too. He got out and stood by his car, arms crossed, watching the house. He wasn't coming in. He was just standing guard. I served Tom the pot roast, my hand steady as I spooned gravy onto his plate. The recorder in the centerpiece was a silent witness. "How are the grandchildren, Martha?" he asked, his voice full of false warmth. I smiled. "They're well. It's hard, you know, with Sarah not here to see them grow up." I watched his eyes. A flicker, there and gone. "Such a tragedy," he murmured, cutting his meat. "She was like a daughter to me." The lie was so smooth, so practiced. I needed to push him just a little. You know, George left a few things unsettled, I said casually. I've been going through his papers, found some old photos of you two with Sarah. His knife stilled for a second. Oh? Those must be nice memories? Some are, I said. There was one at the park, near the cliffs. She looked upset. You had your hand on her arm. The air in the room went cold. Tom put his fork down. Martha, what are you implying? Just then, my front door opened. Mark walked in without knocking. Everything okay in here? He asked, his gaze shifting between me and Tom. He hadn't come for dinner. He'd come as Tom's backup. Mark, join us, Tom said, his voice easy again, a mask back in place. Your mother was just reminiscing. Mark pulled up a chair, his presence tilting the balance of power in the room. I was outnumbered in my own kitchen. I had to stay calm. The recorder was still running. I was just telling Tom how much I missed Sarah, I said, passing Mark a plate. He didn't take it. Mum, we need to talk about this obsession. It's not healthy. He was using the same language Tom had used with Bill Miller. Unhealthy, obsessed. Words to make me seem irrational. It's not an obsession, Mark. It's a mother's love. Tom sighed, a performance of concern. Martha, we all loved her. But you need to let go, for your own good. He looked at Mark. Maybe it is time to consider a change of scenery, a quieter place. They were tag-teaming me, right at my dinner table. I looked at my son. Do you know what your father wrote in his note, Mark? His face tightened. Dad was sick and confused at the end. You can't trust what he wrote. He knew. He knew about the note. The realization was a physical blow. My own son was protecting my daughter's killer. I stood up and started clearing the plates, my mind racing. I had to get the recorder. I had their voices, their collusion, but I needed a confession. I have apple pie for dessert, I said, my back to them. I'll just get it. I walked to the kitchen, my legs feeling weak. I could hear their hushed, urgent voices in the dining room. I opened the fridge, the light blinding for a moment. When I turned around, Tom was standing in the kitchen doorway. Let me help you, Martha, he said, his eyes not on me, but scanning the countertops, the table. He was looking for something. For a recorder, had he guessed? He stepped closer. You know, George was a weak man, he said softly, so Mark wouldn't hear. He couldn't protect his own family, but I can. I've always protected this family. It was a threat, wrapped in a boast. I held the pie dish, my knuckles white. Did you protect Sarah that night on the cliff road? His smile vanished. He leaned in, his voice a low hiss. You need to stop digging, Martha, or you'll end up in a home so fast it'll make your head spin. Mark will sign the papers. He agrees, you're not well. He picked up the pie server and smiled again. Now let's have that dessert. We ate the pie in near silence. The recorder had captured it all, the threats, the implication. But it wasn't a direct confession. It was my word against his, and my son would side with him. After they left, I retrieved the recorder and hid it in my bedroom. I felt utterly alone. This fight cost me my relationship with my son. I played the recording back. Tom's voice was clear and cold. End up in a home so fast. It was enough for the restraining order, maybe, but not for justice. I needed one more thing. I remembered the property management company Tom owned, the building where Bill Miller had his accident. I spent the next morning at the county clerk's office, looking up business licenses and property records. Tom's company, Safe Harbor Properties, managed a dozen buildings. One was a small apartment complex. I cross-referenced the address with an old phone book I kept. The tenant listed for Unit 3B was a name I recognized, David Riggs, the retired officer. He wasn't just living in a Tom-managed building, he was living there for free. The records showed no rent had been paid in over a decade. Tom had been paying him off all these years. This was the concrete link I needed. I drove to my lawyer's office with the recorder and the property records. Angela listened to the audio, her face grim. This is good, Martha. The threat is clear. Combined with the financial tie to the retired officer, it shows a pattern of coercion. She prepared the paperwork for the restraining order and said she would contact the district attorney's office. It may not be enough for a murder charge, but it's a start. It will expose him. I left her office feeling a fragile hope. When I got home, I saw a moving van parked in front of Mark's house down the street. My heart sank. Was he moving? I called him. "What's the moving van for, Mark?" He was silent for a moment. "Lily is coming to live with me for a while. She's been having a hard time." My granddaughter. He was using her, getting her out of my reach. "Put her on the phone," I demanded. "She doesn't want to talk to you, Mom. She thinks you're unstable." The cruelty of it took my breath away. He was isolating me, using my own granddaughter as a weapon. I hung up and looked at the photo of Sarah on my mantel. I would not let them do this. I would fight for her, and for Lily. I went to my desk and began to write a letter to my granddaughter, telling her the whole story. It was a risk, but she deserved the truth. As I sealed the envelope, my doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. It was 2 uniformed police officers. "Ma'am, we have a report concerning your welfare. Can we come in?" Tom and Mark had made the first move. I opened the door to the 2 police officers, my heart pounding, but my face calm. "Good evening, officers. How can I help you?" The younger one spoke. "Ma'am, we received a concern about your welfare, a report of possible confusion and self-neglect." Tom and Mark's work. I had to discredit this without seeming defensive. "I'm perfectly fine, as you can see. Would you like to come in for a moment? I just made some tea." I needed to show them I was lucid and in control. I was risking my privacy and the chance they might misinterpret something. Now, Tom was using the police to unsettle me. They stepped inside, glancing around my tidy living room. I poured tea, my hands steady. "My son and his friend are worried about me living alone since my husband passed," I explained. "But I assure you, I'm managing well." The older officer nodded. "We have to check these things, Ma'am. Do you have any family we can contact?" I gave him Angela's number, my lawyer. "She handles my affairs. You can verify everything with her." As they spoke to her on the phone, I noticed the younger officer looking at the photo of Sarah on the mantel. His expression softened. "Pretty girl," he said. I smiled sadly. She was my daughter. She died years ago. He didn't know that was the heart of all this. After their call, they seemed satisfied. "Everything appears in order, Ma'am. Sorry to bother you." They left, but as I closed the door, I saw Tom's car parked down the street, watching. He knew his first move had failed. After the police left, I called Angela immediately. "They used a welfare check to try and discredit me," I told her. "We need to act fast." She agreed. "The restraining order is filed, but we should also petition for a protective order based on the harassment. I'll contact the DA about the recording and the property records." I aimed to protect myself legally and reveal Tom's actions. It was draining me emotionally to be fighting my own son. The constant watch from Tom was making everything feel more intense. I spent the evening writing a detailed statement. Everything from George's note to the voice recording. I made copies and stored them in different places, one with Angela, one in my safe deposit box, and one mailed to myself. I wouldn't let them erase the truth. The next morning, I drove to the post office to send the letter to Lily. I had to reach my granddaughter before Mark poisoned her against me completely. As I dropped the letter in the mailbox, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from my home security system, a motion alert at my back door. I had installed cameras after the break-in. I pulled up the feed on my phone. Mark was there, trying to open the door with a key. He must have kept a spare from before. I called him. "What are you doing at my house, Mark?" He sounded flustered. "I was just checking on you, Mum. You weren't answering your phone." "I'm fine. Please leave." I watched on the camera as he sighed and walked away, but he left something on the doorstep. I drove home, my hands tight on the wheel. When I arrived, I found a brochure for a senior living community on my welcome mat. The brochure was for Sunset Gardens, a place known for its secure memory care unit. Mark and Tom were escalating. I couldn't wait for the legal system anymore. I needed to confront Tom directly, but on my terms. I wanted to make him slip up. I was putting my own safety on the line if he felt cornered. The unspoken danger was that they could have me committed. I remembered the community church picnic was this weekend. Tom, as a deacon, would be there, surrounded by people. A public setting might make him cautious. I decided to go. On Saturday, I put on a nice dress and drove to the park. I saw Tom by the grill, laughing with friends. I walked up to him, smiling. "Tom, so good to see you outside of my kitchen." His smile faltered for a second. "Martha, I didn't expect you here." "I needed some fresh air," I said. "And I've been thinking about what you said about protecting the family. It reminded me of something George told me before he died." I kept my voice light. "He said you always knew how to handle difficult situations, like with Sarah's accident." Tom's face went pale. He grabbed my arm, his grip tight. "This isn't the place, Martha." People were watching. I pulled my arm free. "You're right, it's not." I turned and walked away, feeling his eyes on my back. Later, as I was leaving, the church secretary stopped me. "Martha, Tom asked me to give you this." She handed me a folded note. It read, "Stop now, or everyone will know about George's affair. Do you really want to tarnish his memory?" The note about George's affair was a low blow. Tom was trying to distract me by attacking my husband's reputation. But I didn't care about old secrets. I cared about justice for Sarah. I needed to find out if this was true or just another lie. It would be heartbreaking to learn something new about George. Tom was now trying to shame me personally. I went home and searched through George's old papers again. In a locked box I'd never opened, I found letters from a woman named Helen, dated around the time of Sarah's death. George had been unfaithful. It explained why he felt guilty and never confronted Tom. He was vulnerable to blackmail. This was Tom's hold over him. I felt a strange relief. It wasn't about weakness, but about Tom's cruelty. I needed to use this. I called Angela. "Tom is threatening to reveal George's affair to discredit me. How can we use this?" She advised, "It shows his pattern of coercion. Document it. But be careful. He might go public." That evening, my doorbell rang. It was Lily, my granddaughter. She stood there, tears in her eyes. "Grandma, Dad told me you're spreading lies about Uncle Tom. Is it true?" Mark had gotten to her first. I invited her in, my heart breaking. I had to tell her the truth, even if it hurt. I sat Lily down at the kitchen table and poured her some milk, just like when she was little. Your father is trying to protect me in his own way, I began. But sometimes protection feels like betrayal. I showed her George's note and the photos from Sarah's camera. I played her a part of the recording where Tom threatened me. Her face shifted from doubt to horror. Uncle Tom did this? She whispered. I nodded. And your father is helping him, maybe without knowing the full truth. I hoped to regain her trust and have someone on my side. It weighed on me to share this burden with her. Tom's control over Mark was making things harder. Lily hugged me. I'm so sorry, Grandma. I'll talk to Dad. After she left, I felt a glimmer of hope. But an hour later, Mark called, furious. How dare you drag Lily into this? She's just a kid. I held my ground. She's old enough to know the truth, Mark, and so are you. He hung up. The next morning, I received a certified letter from a law firm. It was a petition from Mark for guardianship over me, claiming I was making irrational decisions based on paranoia. Tom had played his final card. I had to fight this in court, and I had only a week to prepare. I called Angela, and as we spoke, I looked out the window. Tom was across the street, smiling as he got into his car. He thought he had won. The guardianship petition felt like a betrayal etched in legal paper. Mark was trying to have me declared incompetent, all to silence me about Tom. I had 1 week until the court hearing. I sat at my kitchen table with Angela, the morning sun highlighting the dust motes in the air. We need to attack their credibility, Angela said, her fingers tapping the petition. We'll submit the recording, the property records, and statements about the harassment. But I knew it wasn't enough. I needed something undeniable, something that would make the judge see the truth. I was paying with my peace. Every moment was consumed by this fight. Tom's influence was a constant weight, weaving through my life like a poison. After Angela left, I pulled out an old photo album, my hands trembling. I wasn't looking for memories. I was looking for clues. I found a picture from a church camping trip the year before Sarah died. Tom was there, his arm around a teenage boy I didn't recognize. The boy looked uncomfortable, much like Sarah in the park photo. I remembered a rumor from years ago, something about Tom and a youth group incident that was hushed up. It was a long shot, but I had to follow it. I called the church office, pretending to be organizing a reunion. I asked about former youth group members. The secretary was helpful until I mentioned Tom's name. Her tone cooled. I'm afraid I can't help with that, she said quickly and hung up. That moment changed everything. Her reaction was too sharp, too defensive. I knew I was onto something. I spent the rest of the day online, searching for that boy's face or any news about the church. As dusk fell, I found an old community newsletter archived online. It mentioned a family named Peterson who moved away abruptly. Their son, Jason, had been in the youth group. I wrote down the name. My doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. I opened the door to find a woman I didn't know, her eyes red from crying. Are you Martha? She asked. My name is Helen. George told me I could trust you if anything ever happened to him. Helen stood in my hallway, clutching her purse like a lifeline. She was the woman from George's letters. I invited her in, my mind racing. This was the affair, but her presence now meant something else. George said you were a good woman, she began, sitting on my sofa. He told me about Tom. He was afraid of him. I listened, my heart aching. She explained that George confided in her after Sarah's death. Tom had threatened to expose their affair if George didn't provide the alibi. George was weak, but he loved you and Sarah, Helen said. He died carrying that guilt. This was the proof I needed of Tom's coercion. but using it meant exposing George's secret, tarnishing his memory. It brought a fresh wave of grief. The threat from the guardianship hearing loomed, now only 6 days away. Helen's visit changed everything in a way I never expected. She handed me a folded letter. "George wrote this for you. He asked me to give it to you only if Tom ever threatened you directly." I opened it. George's handwriting detailed how Tom confessed to pushing Sarah during an argument on the cliff road. Tom said she threatened to tell everyone about his inappropriate behavior with youth group members. Jason Peterson was one of them. George wrote that he was too ashamed and scared to act, but he begged for my forgiveness. I felt a strange calm. This was the evidence. After Helen left, I called Angela and read her the letter. She was silent for a moment. "This changes everything, Martha. We can use this to show Tom's pattern of manipulation and the motive for the alibi." But as I hung up, I saw Mark's car pull up outside. He got out and marched toward my door, his face a mask of anger. He must have found out about Helen's visit. Mark didn't knock. He threw the door open. "What did you say to Lily? She's packed a bag and says she's moving in with you," he shouted. I stood my ground, the letter from George still in my hand. "I told her the truth, Mark. Something you've been avoiding." He saw the letter and sneered. "More of Dad's crazy scribbles? You're destroying this family with your fantasies." The injustice cut deep. My own son calling me a liar. I wanted to make him see, but it was costing us our relationship, which was crumbling further. Tom's influence was clear in Mark's eyes. He was completely under his control. I took a breath. "Read it, Mark. Read what your father wrote about Tom." I thrust the letter at him. He glanced at it, then threw it on the floor. "I don't care. Tom is the only one who's been here for us. You're just a lonely old woman trying to cause trouble." His words were a blow, but then Lily appeared behind him in the doorway, her backpack slung over her shoulder. "I'm staying with Grandma, Dad. I believe her." Mark turned, his face shocked. "Lily, no. She's filling your head with lies." Lily stepped inside. "I heard the recording, Dad. I saw the photos. Why are you protecting him?" Mark looked between us, his resolve wavering. "You don't understand," he muttered, but he didn't leave. He just stood there, confused and hurt. This was a shift. Mark was starting to doubt. But then my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Tell Lily to go home, or she'll be sorry." Tom was threatening my granddaughter now. The threat was escalating, and I had to protect her. I showed Lily and Mark the text. Mark's face paled. "This has to stop," he said, his voice low. Tom wouldn't. But his voice trailed off as he saw the fear in Lily's eyes. For the first time, he seemed uncertain. "We need to go to the police," I said firmly. "With all of it." But Mark shook his head. "No, not yet. Let me talk to Tom. I need to hear it from him." I knew it was a risk. Tom could manipulate him further. Any delay could put Lily's safety at risk. The strain was immense, with the court hearing 5 days away. Lily insisted on staying, so I made up the guest room for her. After she went to bed, Mark left, promising to confront Tom and call me. I waited, pacing my living room. An hour later, my phone rang. It was Mark, his voice shaky. "Mum, I talked to Tom. He denied everything, of course. But he said, if we don't drop this, he'll make sure Lily gets into trouble. He implied he has friends in the police who can plant something in her car." My blood ran cold. Tom was using the same tactics he used on George. This was a breakthrough. Mark was finally seeing Tom for what he was. We have to act now, Mark, I urged. He agreed. I'll come over in the morning. We'll go to the police together. I hung up, feeling a fragile hope. But as I checked on Lily, I saw headlights outside. A car idled across the street, same as before. Tom was watching. I called the non-emergency police line and reported a suspicious vehicle. Within minutes, a patrol car arrived and the idling car sped off. But as the police drove away, my landline rang. I picked it up. No one spoke, but I could hear breathing. Then a click. The silence was more terrifying than any words. The silent call left me unnerved. I double-checked all the locks and made sure Lily was safe. Sleep was impossible. I needed to get through the night and go to the police in the morning with Mark. We were paying with our collective fear, a heavy blanket smothering the house. Tom's presence felt everywhere, even in the dark. At dawn, Mark arrived, looking exhausted. I didn't sleep, he admitted. I kept thinking about what you said, about Dad's note. I remember Dad being different after Sarah died, withdrawn. I thought it was grief. We sat at the kitchen table, Lily joining us. I laid out all the evidence. George's note, the camera photos, the recording, the property records, Helen's testimony, and George's final letter. Mark read everything slowly, his hands trembling. When he finished, he looked up, tears in his eyes. I'm so sorry, Mom. I was blind. Tom was always there, helping with money, advice. I thought he was family. This was the moment I had prayed for. My son was back on my side, but we had to move quickly. We drove to the police station together. We asked to speak to a detective about a cold case and harassment. We were led to a small room and met Detective Evans, a stern-looking woman. We presented our evidence. She listened carefully, taking notes. When we played the recording, her expression tightened. This is serious, she said. We'll need to investigate Mr. Harris immediately. She took copies of all the documents and said she would assign officers to look into Jason Peterson and the church records. As we left the station, I felt a weight lift. But when we returned home, there was an envelope taped to my door. It was a formal notice from the court. The guardianship hearing had been moved up. It was now in 2 days. Tom had used his connections to speed it up, trying to beat us to the punch. We had less time than I thought. The court notice felt like a punch to the gut. 2 days. Tom had used his connections to move the guardianship hearing up, trying to strip me of my rights before the police could build their case. I stood in my hallway, the paper crumpling in my hand. Mark put a steadying arm around me. We won't let him win, Mom, he said, his voice firm. Lily nodded, her face set in determination. We had to act fast. I needed to ensure the police had everything they needed to arrest Tom before the hearing. It was emotionally draining. I was exhausted, and the thought of facing Tom in court was terrifying. The pressure was immense, with Tom undoubtedly working behind the scenes to discredit us. I called Detective Evans and told her about the accelerated hearing. She assured me they were moving quickly and had already located Jason Peterson, who now lived in a neighboring state. He had agreed to speak to them later today. This was a breakthrough. Jason could confirm Tom's pattern of behavior. After the call, I gathered all the documents again, making extra copies. Mark helped me organize everything. As we worked, the doorbell rang. It was a process server with a subpoena for me to appear at the hearing. I took it calmly, but my hands were shaking. After he left, I noticed a car slowly driving past the house. It wasn't Tom's, but the driver stared a moment too long. I was being watched. Later that evening, Detective Evans called back. Her voice was tense. Jason Peterson confirmed everything. He said Tom made inappropriate advances when he was a teen, and his family moved to avoid scandal. But he also said something else. Tom bragged about having friends in high places who could make problems go away. She paused. We're bringing Tom in for questioning tomorrow morning. I felt a surge of hope. But as I hung up, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. See you in court, Martha. Don't bother bringing your lawyer. It was signed with a single initial, T. The text from Tom was a clear attempt to intimidate me before the hearing. I showed it to Mark and Lily over breakfast. He's scared, Mark said, stirring his coffee. The police questioning him today must have shaken him. I needed to stay strong for the court appearance tomorrow and trust the legal process. I was losing my peace. Every moment was filled with anxiety. Tom's pressure was relentless, even from afar. We spent the day preparing with Angela, my lawyer. She was confident we could defeat the guardianship petition with the new evidence from the police. The judge will see this for what it is, a coercive tactic, she said. But I knew Tom had resources and influence. As we reviewed the documents, my phone rang. It was Detective Evans. Tom Harris was in for questioning this morning, she said. He denied everything, of course. But we have enough to hold him for further investigation based on the coercion and harassment charges. We're also reopening Sarah's case file. This was huge. I felt a weight lift, but it was short-lived. Angela's phone buzzed. She listened, her face growing grim. That was the court clerk, she said, after hanging up. Tom's lawyer has filed a motion to exclude the police evidence from the guardianship hearing, calling it irrelevant and prejudicial. This development was devastating. Tom was using legal maneuvers to blindside us. If the motion succeeded, the judge might never hear about his crimes. We had to rethink our strategy overnight. Later, as I tried to sleep, I heard a noise outside. I peered through the blinds and saw a figure lurking near the edge of my property. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, whoever it was had vanished. They found footprints in the flower bed, but nothing else. The silence felt heavier than before. The day of the guardianship hearing arrived, cloudy and damp. I dressed carefully in a navy blue suit, wanting to look competent and composed. Mark and Lily came with me for support. Angela met us at the courthouse, her briefcase bulging with files. The motion to exclude the evidence is our first hurdle, she whispered as we entered the courtroom. I aimed to prove I was of sound mind and expose Tom's motives. It cost me my dignity, having to defend my sanity in public. Tom's pressure was palpable. He sat across the room with his lawyer, smiling smugly. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s, called the session to order. Tom's lawyer argued his motion, claiming the police investigation was unrelated to my mental state. Angela countered, stating that Tom's harassment proved his intent to control me, which was directly relevant. The judge listened intently. Then she ruled, I'll allow the evidence for context, but keep it brief. It was a partial victory. As Angela began presenting our case, the courtroom doors opened quietly. Detective Evans walked in and handed a note to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. She read it, then looked at Tom. Mr. Harris, I've just been informed that you are under arrest for coercion, witness intimidation, and obstruction of justice. Bailiff, please take him into custody. The room erupted in whispers. Tom's smile vanished, replaced by shock. He was handcuffed and led away. The judge adjourned the hearing indefinitely. I felt a surge of relief, but as we left the courtroom, Tom's lawyer approached me. This isn't over, he hissed. He'll be out on bail by tonight. The victory felt fragile. Tom was released on bail later that day, as his lawyer predicted. The news left me feeling vulnerable again. But the arrest had changed things. The community was buzzing with gossip, and people were starting to see Tom in a new light. I needed to stay safe and support the ongoing police investigation into Sarah's death. I was constantly afraid that Tom might retaliate. The pressure eased slightly with Mark and Lily by my side, but Tom's freedom was a threat. Detective Evans called to update me. We're building a strong case for the coercion charges, and we've found more witnesses from the youth group who are willing to come forward. But for Sarah's case, we need physical evidence. We're re-examining the Cliff Road scene with new technology. I thanked her and hung up, feeling hopeful but impatient. That afternoon, Lily and I were in the garden when a car pulled up. It was Helen, George's former lover. She looked nervous. "I heard about Tom's arrest," she said. "I wanted to give you this." She handed me a small key. George left a safety deposit box in my name for safekeeping. He said it contained something important about Tom. My hands trembled as I took it. Mark drove us to the bank immediately. Inside the box, we found a stack of old letters and a small, worn notebook. It was Tom's, from years ago. In it, he had written about his anger towards Sarah for threatening to expose him. One entry detailed their argument on the Cliff Road. He didn't admit to pushing her, but he described her falling and him leaving her there. It was as close to a confession as we might get. We took it straight to Detective Evans. She confirmed it could be crucial evidence. As we drove home, I felt a sense of closure nearing. But when we arrived, my house had been vandalized. The front window was broken, and the word "liar" was spray-painted on the door. Tom was still fighting back. The vandalism was the last straw. The police came, took photos, and increased patrols in the area. But I was done living in fear. With the notebook as evidence, the district attorney decided to pursue charges against Tom for involuntary manslaughter in Sarah's death. He was arrested again, and this time, bail was denied. The community turned against him. His church asked him to step down, and his business collapsed. The guardianship petition was withdrawn by Mark, who formally apologized and worked to rebuild our relationship. Lily moved back home with her parents, but we saw each other often. It had cost me dearly, my peace, my trust, and nearly my family, but justice was finally served. In the quiet weeks that followed, I found myself spending more time in Sarah's old room, not with grief, but with a sense of peace. I planted a rosebush in the garden in her memory, a place where I could sit and remember the good times. Mark and Lily helped me sort through George's things, and we donated most of them, keeping only what mattered. I started volunteering at a local senior centre, sharing my story with others who felt powerless. It wasn't a dramatic end, but a gentle settling. One afternoon, as I sat on my porch with a cup of tea, I realized the house felt like a home again. The shadows were gone, replaced by the warmth of family and the quiet certainty that I had done right by my daughter. I opened Sarah's photo album and smiled at a picture of her laughing, free from the pain that had haunted us for so long. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in years, it felt bright.